As I mentioned at the top of the hour, they've fine-tuned the 2020 lockdown model so that this year's lockdown will have coppers bursting in to check that you're not going at it like jackrabbits. Britain urges people with monkeypox to abstain from sex as cases rise. And don't forget, by Britain, they mean the Northern Hemisphere's numero uno sex fiend, the Prime Minister. I can't wait for Sue Gray's report on Orgygate at number 10. But don't worry, you'll be able to have sex if you get the vaccine. Yes, there it is. One little prick and you're all set. The World Health Organization has been playing this one very cool, not wanting to seem too obvious about milking the monkeypox, but at the same time using it by implication to bolster the case for its new one-size-fits-all global pandemic treaty. Quote, the WHO is considering whether the outbreak should be assessed as a potential public health emergency of international concern, an official told Reuters. A WHO determination that an outbreak constitutes a global health emergency, as it did with COVID or Ebola, would help accelerate research and funding to contain a disease. Oh, yes, contain the disease. You know what that means? Bring on the mandates. Bring on the mandates. The jabby went a little bit quiet for a couple of weeks, but we need to get it back. Jabba, 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 said the monkey to the chimp.
Dabba, 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 said the chimpy to the monk. Dabba, 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 said the monkey to the chimp.
Yeah, sing it. It's a 100 and, let me work this out. It's a 108-year-old song, and we've put it back in circulation here at GB News. Adele should do a cover of that. She'd have a monster hit. Jabba, jabba, jabba. As it happens, things didn't go the jabba, jabba, jabba's way on this new pandemic treaty. Today at the World Health Assembly, the only thing standing between the Chinese Politburo and their globalist sellouts and the governments of Britain, Europe, North America and Australasia was the African delegation. Here is our splendid Commonwealth cousin, Mr. Moses Kitili from Botswana, declining to be shanghaied into a World Health Organization takeover.
The amendments need to be considered as a holistic package, and the process should be transparent, inclusive, credible, and consensual, and with full respect for the sovereignty of member states, while pursuing our collective action. The African region shares the view that the process should not be fast-tracked by the amendments of Article 59 or the technical.
It may not be the most riveting soundbite you've ever heard, but that is the sound of a humiliating defeat for the WHO and its lapdogs in the chancelleries of the West. God bless you, Mr. Moses Kitile, for doing what the delegates from the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, continental Europe, none of them were prepared to do. We'll have more on this with Ava Valadinga-Broek in a couple of minutes. You know, I often get asked why we cover these stories, why we don't just do the ginger growler of the week or whatever happens to excite the great thundering herd of the groupthink media as they obediently trot off after this week's ginger growler. Because sometimes shining just a little bit of light on these things can make a difference. As you saw yesterday and last week, GB News has been covering the imminent vaporization of a small North Yorkshire village by the dumping upon it of 1,500 quote-unquote asylum seekers. A decision made by some unknown bureaucrat in the Home Office. I'd love to know which unknown bureaucrat it was so that he or she could then turn down our request to appear on the show. Mark White was live in Linton-on-Ouse on this show last night. The first, quote, asylum seekers were due to arrive today. That's now on hold, pending further consultations. You can't change the trajectory if you never even talk about it. That's true not just for the groupthink media, but for politicians too. All these overpaid political consultants who say, oh, we focus grouped it, Minister, and if you mention the word migrants, people will think you're racist. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine, Minister, if all you want is a car and driver and a knighthood as your country goes down the toilet of history. But as we've just seen, at the WHO and at Linton-on-Ouse, sunshine is the best disinfectant when it comes to a small Yorkshire village or the pandemic treaty. Oh, and also the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of British subjects widowed, orphaned or disabled by the very oversold vaccines, to put it at its mildest. We've interviewed some of the bereaved and injured on this show, and I'm pleased to say that not only has Baroness Hallett requested that vaccine injuries and deaths be part of her official inquiry, but other media outlets have now taken up the subject. The Mail on Sunday and a couple of others. Vicky Spitt, who you can see on your screen there, Vicky lost the love of her life to the AstraZeneca vaccine. Come on in, guys. The water's fine. You can't change the trajectory if you don't even talk about it. But the Code of Omerta, the wall of silence from Sajid Javid, Sian Jones at the UK Statistics Authority, AstraZeneca, Lord Grade of Ofcom, a once talented television executive, now reduced to telling other television executives what they can and cannot do. Full fact. Self-appointed fact-checkers funded by American gazillionaires to kill British democracy. This whole Omerta code is not sustainable if more and more people are demanding to know what's going on. What's going on is very odd. I plucked this at random from the Telegraph, saw it just before I came on air. From the Telegraph, COVID lockdown blamed for deaths of more than 3,000 diabetics. Because these Zoom calls work so well, don't they? You know, I wish Florence Nightingale would have invented a wholly different kind of nursing if she'd just been able to nurse on Zoom calls all day long. COVID lockdown blamed for deaths of more than 3,000 diabetics. I'm sick of Full Fact. I'm sick of Ofcom. I'm sick of the groupthink media. There's all basically the propaganda is untrue. And we've lived under tighter and tighter propaganda from Facebook and Twitter and all the rest of it. And the story, what's really happening out there, is not as the propaganda says. Whether you're talking about the WHO, this is why they just don't want to cover these stories. Don't want to cover what's happening at the WHO. Don't want to cover what's happening in a Yorkshire village. So it's a temporary reprieve for Linton-on-Ouse. It's a temporary reprieve at the World Health Organization. But that's better than the way it looked as if it would go just a week ago. You have to stay on the case of these sick control freaks.